The human prince was meant to die, until the princess intervened. The stars outside the palace windows glittered like scattered diamonds, and yet, within the walls of the grand alien city, shadows moved with quiet purpose. Every corridor, every hall, seemed to hum with secrets, and the human heart that had always believed in honor and trust now beat with unease. Prince Adrian stepped carefully into the grand banquet hall. The walls shimmered with a soft, living light, flowing like water over delicate carvings of alien scenes that no human had ever learned to read. The air smelled faintly metallic, mixed with the scent of flowers that glowed softly in the alien lamps. He had been told that the empire was known for its beauty and culture, but now the beauty felt like a mask. He could sense the tension beneath the polite smiles of the courtiers. Adrian adjusted his ceremonial robes, feeling the weight of human expectations on his shoulders. Every gesture he made, every smile he gave, was observed by dozens of pairs of alien eyes. Some were curious, some cold, and some calculating. He did not yet know that these eyes belonged to people who had already decided he should not leave the palace alive. The princess entered quietly. Even in the midst of a room filled with important officials, she had a presence that could not be ignored. Her robes flowed around her like liquid silver, and her eyes were sharp, scanning every detail of the room with a calm awareness. Unlike others, she did not need to speak loudly to command attention. It came naturally, in the way she carried herself, in the silent authority of her gaze. Adrian felt an odd mixture of fear and relief. He had heard of the princess before, stories of her wisdom and courage, but seeing her now, standing apart from the court, he realized that the tales had not done her justice. Something about the way she moved, almost like she could see through walls, made him trust her immediately, even before he knew why. The banquet began. Servers moved silently, carrying dishes that shimmered with colors he could not name. The guests talked politely, but Adrian noticed the small, almost imperceptible gestures. Hands brushing against hidden weapons, glances exchanged that seemed more like signals than social interaction. He did not understand the language yet, but his instincts told him that danger was close. The princess did not ignore it. She had spent her life learning the subtle signs of threats, reading expressions and movements in a way that few could. She noticed a server whose hands trembled slightly as he poured wine into a cup. She saw a guard whose eyes flickered toward Adrian with a hidden intensity. Nothing escaped her, and she understood immediately that the human prince was in more danger than anyone in the hall realized. As the first toast was raised, the room seemed to hold its breath. Adrian followed the ritual carefully, raising his glass politely, trying to smile. He did not notice the faint sheen of liquid on the rim of his cup that was not wine at all. The princess did. Her hand tightened slightly on the edge of the table, and her mind raced to figure out how to act without revealing that she already knew of the threat. She could not move openly, not yet. If she acted too soon, the assassins would know she was aware, and they were skilled. This was not a careless plot, but a precise, calculated strike. She studied every detail of the room, the angles of the lights, the position of the guards, the subtle shifts in the shadows. Then, almost imperceptibly, she gave a small nod to a security drone hidden in the ceiling panel. It slid silently into motion, ready to intercept anything that tried to move toward Adrian with lethal intent. Adrian sipped his drink. It was sweet, oddly fragrant, and for a moment he felt comforted by the alien hospitality. Then a faint metallic taste touched his tongue, and instinct made him hesitate. His eyes flicked up, meeting the princess's. There was no time for words, but in that single look she communicated everything. Do not drink, do not trust, stay calm. He froze, placing the cup back on the table slowly, trying not to betray the panic that surged within him. The room continued as if nothing had happened. Laughter, polite conversation, the sound of glasses clinking. But beneath it, A current of danger pulsed like electricity through the hall. Adrian realized he was alone in understanding the threat, alone, except for the princess. He was grateful, but he also knew that reliance on anyone in a foreign court could be dangerous. Yet her gaze was steady, and for the first time he felt a flicker of hope in the face of death. The princess moved next to him, subtly, as if her presence would not draw attention. "Be careful," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of conversation. "Do not leave your seat until the toast is finished." There was urgency in her tone, but also control. She knew how to manage the moment without revealing panic. Minutes passed. Every detail she had noticed began to take shape. The server who had trembled stepped back, and another figure moved into position. But the princess was already several steps ahead. She guided the security drones to intercept the device meant to poison Adrian, while simultaneously signaling loyal guards to surround key areas. The conspirators had planned for precision, but the princess's foresight began to unravel it. Adrian watched silently, still unsure of what was happening but trusting her instinctively. He had been trained in diplomacy, in reading body language and assessing danger, but nothing had prepared him for a court where assassination was disguised as ceremony. The princess moved like a shadow, graceful and deadly, and he began to understand why she was feared and admired in equal measure. The conspirators realized something was wrong. Their movements became hurried, almost careless. One tried to slip a hidden device into the dessert, but a silent drone intercepted it, sending it spinning harmlessly into a corner. Another tried to move closer to Adrian, but a guard blocked the way silently without causing a scene. The room was still filled with laughter and polite conversation, but beneath it, a battle of intellect and stealth was unfolding. Adrian's heart raced, but he did not panic. He trusted the princess, and he began to observe more closely. He noticed the slight shift in a chandelier, the subtle change in a guard's stance, the almost imperceptible tension in the faces of those who were planning to kill him. And through it all, the princess remained calm, a steady beacon in the chaos. The final moment of danger arrived as the conspirators attempted a direct approach. A figure lunged, aiming for Adrian, but the princess was faster. She intercepted with a combination of precise movements and subtle gadgets hidden in her attire. The attacker stumbled off balance, and before he could recover, the security drones immobilized him. In a blink, the banquet hall returned to its appearance of normalcy, as if nothing had happened. Adrian exhaled slowly, the weight of realization pressing on him. He had been seconds from death, and only the princess's vigilance had saved him. He looked at her, and she gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod, acknowledging the danger and the quiet heroism of the moment. He did not need words to understand that she had risked much to intervene, and in that understanding, trust was born. The rest of the banquet continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The courtiers whispered behind closed hands, curious about the human prince who had survived unscathed. They did not know why, but they sensed that something had shifted. A subtle tension lingered in the air, respect mingled with fear. And in the midst of it all, Adrian realized that humanity was no longer simply a distant ally. It was a force that could change the game, and perhaps even save lives that were meant to be lost. As the evening ended, Adrian and the princess moved quietly to a balcony overlooking the city. The alien sky stretched endlessly above them, stars glittering in patterns that seemed impossible to decipher. He did not speak immediately, still processing the events that had almost ended his life. She did not prompt him, allowing silence to hold its weight. Finally, he said, "I owe you my life." She shook her head, her expression calm but firm. "You do not owe me anything," she said. "But you must understand something. In this empire, life is fragile and danger is everywhere. Survival depends on awareness, on courage, and on knowing whom to trust. Remember this, human prince." Adrian nodded, feeling both the gravity and the truth in her words. He had learned more in one evening than he had in years of diplomatic training. The court was a labyrinth of secrets, and the princess had shown him a path through it, one that relied not on power alone, but on wit, courage, and quick thinking. As the night deepened, the city below glimmered with 1,000 lights, each representing life, ambition, and intrigue. Adrian knew that this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the palace, other threats waited, hidden in plain sight. But for now, he was alive, and he had a guide he could trust. The princess had intervened when he was meant to die, and that intervention would change everything. He did not yet understand the full extent of the danger, nor the strength of the bond forming between them, but he knew that humanity, with its ingenuity and courage, had just earned a place in an empire that had underestimated it. And as the first whispers of dawn crept across the alien horizon, Adrian felt a flicker of hope, a promise that even in a world full of shadows, light could emerge when courage and intelligence worked together. The night was not over, the danger was not past, but the human prince had survived. And for the first time in his life, he realized that survival was just the beginning of something much greater. The morning sun crept slowly over the alien city, painting the spires with shades of silver and gold that no human painter could replicate. From the balcony where Prince Adrian had watched the stars the night before, the view was breathtaking, yet he could not enjoy it fully. The danger that had nearly ended his life still lingered in his mind, like a shadow that refused to leave. He had survived because of the princess, but survival was only the first step. Now came the challenge of understanding the web of politics, deception, and power in which he had been trapped. The princess approached him quietly, her steps almost soundless on the balcony's smooth floor. Her expression was calm, but her eyes reflected the sharpness of a mind that never stopped analyzing. "You need to understand why this happened," she said, her voice soft but carrying authority. "The banquet was only the beginning. There are forces here that want to see humans fail, to see them removed from any position of influence. And now, because you survived, those forces will be even more determined." Adrian listened carefully, trying to absorb every word. He had spent his life navigating political minefields on Earth, but this was a different level entirely. Here, the stakes were not just a lost election or a failed treaty. They were life and death, and the game was far more subtle than anything he had encountered before. He realized that if he wanted to survive, and perhaps even help his people, he would have to learn quickly. The princess led him through corridors that twisted like the veins of a living organism. Every door, every passage, seemed to pulse with hidden energy. Adrian noticed that the palace was not just a home or a seat of power. It was a fortress designed to protect those inside and to confound those who wished harm. And yet, despite the defenses, assassins had nearly reached him. That realization made his pulse quicken. They reached a smaller chamber away from the main halls. The room was simple, almost austere by the standards of the palace, but it was filled with data panels, maps, and holographic displays that floated in midair. The princess gestured for Adrian to look at the images, and he saw a map of the city overlaid with colored points and lines. "These are the movements of the conspirators," she explained. "We know who planned the attack, how they intended to execute it, and even some of the reasons behind it. But we do not know all of their allies. Some of them are still hidden." Adrian studied the holographic map, feeling a mixture of awe and apprehension. The complexity of the palace, the hidden routes, the drones, and the secret passages, it was unlike anything he had ever seen. And yet, he began to notice patterns, subtle connections that the princess had already marked. His training in diplomacy and strategy helped him understand the logic behind these movements. For the first time, he felt that he could contribute meaningfully, not just be a passive observer. The princess watched him closely. "You survived because you were cautious and because you trusted observation over assumption. That is a human strength, Adrian, but caution alone is not enough. You must learn to act decisively and sometimes unpredictably to survive here. Adrian nodded, understanding that this was more than a lesson in survival. It was a lesson in partnership. He realized that he and the princess were beginning to form a team, one that combined human ingenuity with alien insight. And in a place where life could be ended with a single mistake, that combination could make the difference between survival and death. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a palace guard. The guard bowed deeply and spoke in a language that Adrian could not understand, but the princess translated quickly. The conspirators are moving again. They are testing the palace's defenses, seeing if anyone notices. It is subtle, but I cannot ignore it. You must stay close to me. They moved together through the palace, Adrian following the princess as she navigated the twisting corridors with confidence. She pointed out subtle signs of movement, a slightly ajar door, a shadow that moved differently from the others, the faint hum of a drone that was not where it should have been. Each detail was a clue, and she taught him to notice them, to interpret them quickly and accurately. As they reached the central hall, the princess stopped suddenly. Adrian nearly collided with her, startled by her sudden motion. She raised a hand, signaling him to remain silent. From the shadows, a group of figures emerged, cloaked and moving with precision. Adrian recognized them immediately as the conspirators from the night before, but they had not expected to be seen. The princess stepped forward calmly, as if meeting acquaintances rather than adversaries. Her voice rang clear, controlled, and commanding. "You are bold to come here again," she said, though her words were measured. "But you underestimate your position. You are in the heart of the Empire, and every move you make is observed." The conspirators paused, exchanging glances. They had assumed that Adrian would be defenseless, that the human prince could be eliminated with ease. But the princess's presence changed everything. She projected confidence, intelligence, and authority, and Adrian felt a surge of admiration. He realized that her intervention the night before was not just a rescue, it was a demonstration of strategy, skill, and courage. One of the conspirators stepped forward, ignoring the warning. He lunged toward Adrian, but the princess acted instantly. With precise timing, she redirected a defensive mechanism hidden in the hall, and the attacker was stopped mid-motion by a sudden barrier of energy. The other conspirators hesitated, realizing that the palace itself was now an ally to the princess. Adrian felt a surge of confidence. He had been taught to act in moments of crisis, and now he saw the opportunity to contribute. Following the princess's lead, he moved quickly, using his understanding of angles and timing to block another attack and create openings for the palace's defenses to engage. The conspirators, skilled though they were, had underestimated the combination of human creativity and alien technology. The confrontation ended as quickly as it began. The conspirators retreated, disappearing into hidden corridors, but not before Adrian caught a glimpse of their frustration and surprise. They had expected fear and hesitation, but they had encountered strategy and courage instead. Adrian realized that humanity's strength was not in brute force or alien technology, but in the mind's ability to adapt, to innovate, to act where others would hesitate. The princess turned to him, her expression calm but sharp. "You are learning quickly," she said. "But there is more. Survival is not enough. You must understand the motivations behind their actions, the alliances that support them. Only then can we anticipate their moves before they happen." Over the next hours, she guided him through a series of lessons in observation, strategy, and diplomacy. They examined holographic records of past conspiracies, maps of the Empire's political landscape, and reports on alien factions that sought to exploit weakness. Adrian absorbed everything, his mind racing to connect dots, to recognize patterns, to think like someone who had to anticipate threats constantly. As they worked, Adrian began to notice something remarkable. The princess was not just a protector, she was a teacher. She pushed him, challenged him, and expected him to rise to the occasion. And he did. He began to see the palace, the court, and even the city outside in a new light, understanding how subtle actions, careful observation, and creative thinking could change outcomes dramatically. By evening, they had prepared a plan to strengthen the palace's defenses further, anticipating the conspirators' next moves. Adrian felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. The night had almost ended him, but now it had awakened a side of him that was capable, alert, and ready to act. He realized that survival had been only the first step in a larger journey, a journey that would test his intelligence, courage, and determination. The princess watched him as they moved through the halls, her eyes reflecting both approval and caution. "You are becoming an ally, not just a guest," she said. "And that is dangerous. Those who wish to harm you will not stop, but together we can be stronger than they expect." Adrian nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. The trust between them had grown, and he knew that it was not blind trust. It was based on competence, awareness, and shared purpose. And in a place where betrayal could come from anywhere, that was more valuable than any weapon. As night fell over the alien city, Adrian and the princess returned to the balcony. The stars shone brightly, a reminder that the universe was vast, and that survival and courage were not limited to any one world. Adrian felt the weight of the day's lessons, the adrenaline of the confrontation, and the hope that humanity could play a meaningful role in the Empire's future. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "I never thought I could do this, but I see now that I can." The princess smiled faintly, a rare warmth touching her expression. "You can because you must, and because you are human. That is a strength they do not expect, and it is one we will use wisely. But remember, the night is far from over. Challenges will come again, and we must be ready." Adrian looked out at the city, feeling the stirrings of determination and courage. He knew that he was no longer simply a guest or a diplomat. He was part of something greater, a struggle that combined human ingenuity and alien wisdom. And he understood, for the first time, that survival was only the beginning. The Empire, the conspirators, and even the stars themselves were witnesses to the emergence of something new. A human who could think, act, and fight alongside those who had once seemed invincible. And in the quiet of the night, with the princess standing beside him, Adrian realized that his journey had truly begun. He was alive, he was learning, and for the first time he felt that humanity had a chance to prove itself in a world that had long underestimated it. The morning sun rose again over the alien city, but this time its light seemed harsher, as if it knew that another trial awaited. Prince Adrian moved through the palace corridors with a growing sense of purpose. He had survived an attempt on his life and learned lessons in observation, strategy, and trust from the princess. Yet, despite the victory of the previous night, he sensed that the conspirators were already plotting their next move. Their failure had made them desperate and dangerous. The princess met him in a quiet chamber filled with glowing holographic maps and panels. Her expression was serious, her sharp eyes scanning each detail as though they could pierce through walls. "They will not stop," she said calmly. "The conspirators are cunning and patient. They will test the palace in ways you cannot yet imagine, and they know you survived. That means they must act carefully or risk exposure. That gives us an advantage, but we must use it wisely." Adrian nodded. He felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. The danger was real, but so was the opportunity to prove that humanity could think, act, and adapt where others hesitated. He realized that survival was no longer enough. To remain alive and protect the Empire, he would have to anticipate their moves, act decisively, and sometimes take risks that were terrifying, but necessary. Their first task was to understand the network behind the assassination attempt. The princess guided Adrian through layers of records, surveillance data, and political reports. Each document revealed more complexity than the last. Alliances between nobles, hidden rivalries, secret factions, and even subtle manipulations of the palace's defenses. Adrian was amazed at how much information could be gathered when someone knew exactly where to look, and he began to see patterns that others had overlooked. As they worked, Adrian noticed something else. The princess's calm and calculated approach was beginning to influence him. His thoughts were sharper, his observations quicker, and his intuition more reliable. He realized that this was not just training, it was transformation. He had begun to think like someone who could survive, and even thrive, in a world of intrigue and danger. By midday, they had identified a small group of nobles who were likely behind the renewed threat. These individuals had influence, resources, and the ability to manipulate others. They had assumed that eliminating a single human would be easy, but Adrian and the princess had disrupted their plans. Now, these conspirators were more careful, yet more desperate, and desperation made people dangerous. The princess led Adrian through a series of simulations to test possible responses. Holographic projections displayed scenarios in which the conspirators attempted to move against them in the palace, in the city, or even in more public spaces. Adrian participated actively, suggesting strategies, predicting movements, and testing the limits of both human and alien ingenuity. With each scenario, he grew more confident, more capable, and more aware of the stakes. Late in the afternoon, the first real test came. A subtle disruption in the palace's energy grid signaled that someone was attempting to bypass security measures. Adrian immediately recognized the signs he had been trained to see: slight flickers in the lights, unusual drone behavior, and a faint hum that did not match the palace's usual energy patterns. The princess noticed his awareness and nodded approvingly. "Good. Now act. Anticipate what they cannot see." Together, they moved quickly through the halls. Adrian followed the princess's lead, using his observations to identify hidden threats and block potential attacks. In a corridor that twisted like a maze, they encountered a group of conspirators trying to access a restricted chamber. Adrian's quick thinking allowed him to block a doorway, while the princess redirected a security drone to intercept another. The confrontation was brief, precise, and effective, leaving the attackers disoriented and unable to complete their plan. For the first time, Adrian realized the full weight of his role. He was not just a guest or an observer, he was an active participant in protecting the Empire. His actions had tangible consequences, and he began to feel the thrill of using his mind and instincts to navigate danger successfully. Yet he also knew that each success would provoke the conspirators to act more cunningly, forcing him to stay ahead of them at all times. After the confrontation, the princess led Adrian to a quiet observation deck overlooking the city. The streets below were calm, almost serene, but Adrian knew better. He understood that danger could come from anywhere at any time. The city was a living organism, full of secrets, and the conspirators were hidden within it, waiting for a chance to strike. "You are ready to do more than survive," the princess said. "You can act, influence, and protect. But you must understand the next principle: power is perception. You have shown courage and intelligence, but now you must be seen as capable. That perception will deter some and provoke others. Both can be used to our advantage." Adrian thought carefully about her words. In his life on Earth, perception had mattered in diplomacy and negotiation, but here, it could mean life or death. He understood that projecting strength, confidence, and decisiveness was as important as planning or reacting. The conspirators had underestimated him once. He would not allow them to do so again. As night fell, they returned to the palace's central chamber. Adrian noticed that subtle changes had been made in anticipation of the next threat. Doors had been reinforced, drones repositioned, and pathways monitored more closely. The princess explained each adjustment, emphasizing the importance of preparation and foresight. Adrian absorbed every detail, realizing that the palace itself had become both a weapon and a shield under her guidance. Hours later, the conspirators made their move. A coordinated attempt to infiltrate the palace from multiple points tested every precaution the princess and Adrian had implemented. Yet, the human prince had learned to think several steps ahead. He anticipated the attackers' paths, blocked access points, and guided security measures with precision. The princess coordinated the palace's defenses, but Adrian's input made the difference. Together, they acted like a single unit, blending human creativity with alien technology and strategy. The battle was quiet but intense. Energy barriers flashed, drones intercepted intruders, and the conspirators' plans unraveled with alarming speed. Adrian realized that their failure was not due to lack of skill or courage, but because they had underestimated the combination of human ingenuity and the princess's insight. One by one, the attackers were neutralized, retreating with frustration and surprise. When the confrontation ended, the palace was calm once more, but the atmosphere had changed. The conspirators would not attack openly again. Adrian and the princess had demonstrated their ability to anticipate, act, and adapt. The human prince had become more than a survivor. He was now a force that could influence the balance of power. The princess looked at him with a rare warmth. "You have done well," she said, "not because of strength, but because of thought, observation, and courage. That is humanity's strength, Adrian. Remember it. That is why you survived when others expected you to fall." Adrian felt a deep sense of pride and purpose. He realized that his journey had transformed him from a diplomat into a strategist, from a guest into a participant, and from a target into an active defender. Humanity had proven, in the heart of an alien empire, that courage and intelligence could match any advantage, even centuries of tradition and power. The night passed with quiet reflection. Adrian could not sleep completely, knowing that the conspirators were still out there, plotting, watching, waiting. Yet he also felt a sense of hope. He had survived once, intervened once, and acted decisively in the second test. With the princess by his side, he believed that they could face whatever came next. The following morning brought new challenges. Reports indicated that the conspirators had sought allies in distant regions, attempting to create unrest and weaken the empire from afar. Adrian and the princess studied these reports, tracing connections and predicting potential threats. Each discovery reinforced the lesson that vigilance, strategy, and adaptability were essential. Survival alone was insufficient. Success required understanding, foresight, and action. Adrian began to recognize patterns in the conspirators' behavior, how they tested defenses, how they sought gaps, how they relied on overconfidence and secrecy. The princess guided him to predict their moves, anticipate their strategies, and act before they could execute their plans. Together, they built a network of observation and response that combined alien technology, human insight, and the careful manipulation of perception. One afternoon, they discovered a plot to create unrest in a neighboring province, a plan that could spark conflict and destabilize the empire. Adrian suggested a strategy: subtly expose the plot to local authorities, allowing them to act while keeping the conspirators unaware that their plan had been discovered. The princess evaluated his suggestion carefully and then approved it. The operation succeeded perfectly, preventing conflict and demonstrating the effectiveness of human ingenuity when combined with alien intelligence. By now, Adrian was no longer a novice. He moved through the palace with confidence, observed with precision, and acted with decisiveness. The human prince, once meant to die, had become a key participant in protecting the empire. And with each success, the conspirators' fear and respect grew. though they remained dangerous and determined. The day ended with Adrian and the princess standing once again on the balcony, overlooking the city. The stars were bright, and the lights of the metropolis glimmered like a sea of fireflies. Adrian felt a sense of accomplishment, but also the weight of responsibility. Survival had taught him courage, observation had taught him awareness, and action had taught him power. He realized that humanity's strength was not just in physical resilience or alien technology. It was in thought, adaptability, and the willingness to act when others hesitated. The princess spoke softly, her voice carrying across the balcony. "You are becoming more than a human prince," she said. "You are a force to be reckoned with. The conspirators will act again, and when they do, they will not underestimate you a second time. But neither will we. Together, we will be stronger than they expect." Adrian nodded, feeling a profound sense of purpose. He had survived an attempt on his life, learned the ways of a foreign empire, and acted decisively to protect it. Humanity had proven itself capable of courage, intelligence, and ingenuity. And he knew, without a doubt, that the journey was far from over. The conspirators remained, hidden and plotting, but the human prince had become a force that could not be ignored, a symbol of the unexpected strength that humans brought to the galaxy. As night fell, the city shimmered beneath them, a reminder that the universe was vast, full of challenges, and yet full of opportunity. Adrian realized that survival had been only the first step. Observation, strategy, and action had revealed a deeper truth. Humanity could rise above expectation, shape events, and influence outcomes in ways that others could not imagine. And standing beside the princess, he understood that he was no longer alone. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next, their combined strength, courage, and intelligence a force that even the most cunning conspirators could not ignore. The human prince, once meant to die, was now a participant, a protector, and a symbol of what humanity could achieve in a galaxy that had underestimated it. The sun had barely risen over the alien city when a wave of tension swept through the palace. Prince Adrian had been awake for hours, reviewing the plans the princess had prepared. The conspirators had been silent for days, but silence was not peace, it was preparation. Every shadow, every subtle shift in the palace's rhythm suggested that they were gathering strength, coordinating their next move. Adrian understood that this time, there would be no warning, no moment to hesitate. The princess entered the room, her expression sharp and determined. "Today, we end this," she said. Her voice carried calm authority, the kind that could inspire confidence in the face of the greatest danger. The conspirators believe that fear and secrecy give them power. We will show them that knowledge, strategy, and courage are stronger, and you, Adrian, will play a decisive role. Are you ready?" Adrian felt a surge of focus. He had grown since his first night in the palace. He had survived an assassination attempt, learned to observe and anticipate danger, and acted decisively to neutralize threats. Today would test everything he had learned. "I am ready," he said, his voice steady. The princess nodded and led him to the command center of the palace, a room filled with holographic displays and panels that mapped the entire city. They studied the movements of the conspirators, tracing hidden pathways and secret alliances. The princess pointed out subtle signs of coordination, energy fluctuations, unusual shifts in drone patterns, and traces of communication that had been overlooked. Adrian began to recognize patterns, to predict their intentions, and to suggest strategies based on human logic and instinct. They decided on a two-pronged plan. The first part involved drawing out the conspirators by presenting an opportunity too tempting to ignore. The second part required precise timing, anticipation, and cooperation between the palace's defenses and Adrian's human insight. It was risky, but the princess trusted his judgment, and he trusted hers. As midday approached, the conspirators took the bait. Figures moved through hidden corridors, attempting to infiltrate the palace's inner sanctum. The moment was tense, every second heavy with the potential for disaster. Adrian observed carefully, noticing subtle movements and shifts that even the advanced palace sensors might miss. He signaled the princess, who coordinated the palace defenses with swift, decisive action. The conspirators were skilled, but they underestimated the combined intelligence of human and alien strategy. One by one, their attempts to breach defenses were thwarted. Drones intercepted hidden devices, security measures neutralized traps, and strategic barriers blocked access. Each failure frustrated the attackers, forcing them to reveal more of their tactics, which the princess and Adrian analyzed in real time. Adrian acted decisively, moving through the palace to block access points and redirect security measures. His actions were swift, calculated, and effective, demonstrating that humans could adapt and innovate even in an alien environment. He realized that this was no longer a test of survival. It was a battle of minds, strategy, and courage. The climactic moment arrived when the conspirators attempted a coordinated strike on the central hall, hoping to capture or eliminate the princess and the human prince. Adrian anticipated their paths, using his observations and intuition to position defenses and create obstacles. The princess moved with precision, guiding the palace's technology to intercept threats and redirect energy barriers. Together, they acted as a seamless team, combining human creativity with alien expertise. The confrontation was intense but calculated. Energy barriers flashed, drones intercepted intruders, and the conspirators' plans unraveled. They had assumed that fear or brute force could succeed, but they had failed to account for strategy, insight, and courage. Adrian felt a surge of confidence and determination as he acted decisively, blocking a hidden corridor and redirecting a security drone to intercept a device meant to bypass defenses. One of the conspirators attempted a final desperate move, charging directly at Adrian with a concealed weapon. The prince anticipated the attack, sidestepped with agility, and used the palace's defensive systems to immobilize the assailant. The princess acted simultaneously, neutralizing other threats and ensuring that no harm reached Adrian or the palace's heart. Within moments, the conspirators were defeated, trapped, or fleeing into the shadows, their plans completely undone. The aftermath was quiet, almost surreal. The palace seemed to exhale, as if relieved that the danger had passed. Adrian and the princess stood together in the central hall, observing the subdued conspirators who had been captured or contained. The human prince had survived not just by chance, but through intelligence, courage, and decisive action. The princess looked at him with a rare smile, acknowledging both the danger they had overcome and the strength he had displayed. "You have proven yourself," she said. "Not because of force, but because of thought, observation, and courage. Humanity's strength is not in sheer power. It is in the mind, the ability to adapt and the willingness to act when others hesitate. Today, you demonstrated all of that." Adrian felt a deep sense of accomplishment, but also a weight of responsibility. He understood that the conspirators' failure would not end the ambitions of those who sought power, but it had shifted the balance. Humanity had earned respect in the Empire, not as a passive ally, but as a capable force that could influence outcomes and protect life through intelligence and courage. The princess led him to a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of the metropolis glittered like a sea of stars, and the alien sky stretched endlessly above. Adrian felt the enormity of what had just occurred. They had survived, outwitted, and neutralized a coordinated threat that had seemed insurmountable. The Empire itself had witnessed the effectiveness of human ingenuity, and the conspirators would no longer underestimate them. "You understand now," the princess said softly, her voice carrying across the balcony. "Survival is only the beginning." Influence, strategy, and courage. These are what allow a people to change outcomes, to protect life, and to shape the future. Humanity has proven that it possesses all three. Adrian nodded, absorbing the truth in her words. He realized that he had grown far beyond the role of diplomat or guest. He was now a protector, a strategist, and a symbol of human resilience. The challenges they had faced had tested his mind, his instincts, and his courage, and he had emerged stronger for it. The next days brought recognition and adjustment. The palace officials, once wary or dismissive, now looked upon Adrian with respect. He was no longer seen as a fragile human prince to be manipulated or eliminated. He was a partner, a strategist whose insight and courage had saved lives and preserved stability. Even distant regions of the empire had heard of the thwarted conspiracies, and human ingenuity was discussed in whispers of admiration and surprise. Despite the victory, Adrian and the princess did not grow complacent. The conspirators had been contained, but other challenges remained. They continued to study reports, monitor communications, and anticipate threats, knowing that vigilance and preparation were essential. The human prince had learned that survival alone was never enough. Action, strategy, and courage were required to influence outcomes and protect what mattered. One evening, as the city lights shimmered below, Adrian reflected on everything he had learned. He had faced death, navigated intrigue, and acted decisively under pressure. He had discovered the power of observation, strategy, and cooperation with the princess. He realized that humanity's true strength lay not in weapons or technology, but in the ability to think, adapt, and act when others hesitated. The princess joined him quietly, her presence steady and reassuring. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have proven that humans are capable of courage, intelligence, and ingenuity that cannot be ignored. And together, we have shown that alliances based on respect, trust, and skill can overcome even the most dangerous threats." Adrian smiled, feeling a deep connection with the princess. He understood that their partnership had grown beyond survival and strategy. It was now a bond built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Together, they had reshaped the perception of humanity within the empire, and in doing so, they had created a force that would influence the future. As the night deepened, Adrian and the princess looked out over the city. The stars above seemed to mirror the lights below, a reminder that the universe was vast and full of possibilities. The conspirators had been defeated, the palace secured, and humanity's place in the empire recognized. Yet Adrian knew that challenges would come again. But for the first time, he felt ready to face them, not just as a human prince, but as a strategist, a protector, and a symbol of human resilience. In that moment, he understood the truth of everything he had learned. Courage, intelligence, and decisive action could shape outcomes in ways that brute force never could. Humanity, underestimated and dismissed by others, had proven that it could rise above expectation, influence events, and protect what was important. And standing beside the princess, Adrian knew that together, they were stronger than any threat, more clever than any adversary, and more determined than anyone who sought to destroy them. The human prince, once meant to die, had not only survived but had become a force capable of changing the course of the empire. And as the first light of dawn touched the palace, Adrian felt a quiet certainty. This was only the beginning. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and nothing, not even the deadliest conspiracies, could take that away. The human prince was meant to die, until the princess intervened.